Hello everyone and welcome back. My name is Kamilian, and in this series I share opinions of mine on movies, TV shows, games, etc. that have a high chance of falling into the minority, so unpopular opinions if you will. With that, today, in my opinion, I believe that Final Fantasy VII Remake holds up perfectly to the original. Now, I'm not trying to tell you this as a fact, nor am I trying to change your mind. All I ask is that you hear me out. I genuinely struggled writing this script because I just don't know where to start. And there's so much to go through that I could make multiple videos on this, but I'm going to try and keep this as short and sweet as possible. So, without any further ado, Avalanche members have more screen time. Outside of the main characters, Cloud, Aerith, Barret, and Tifa, the remake also gives you more time to get to know the Avalanche members, Jessie, Wedge, and Biggs. All three get a lot more screen time in the remake since the first portion of the game is so fleshed out and a whole new story element is introduced in Chapter 4. Jessie enlists you to help her gain her father's work pass in order to access a Shinra warehouse. During this chapter, you head to the residential district along with Biggs and Wedge, who keep Jessie's mother distracted while you break into her house as Cloud to take the pass. Throughout this chapter, you learn so much about the three characters and gain more insight into their backstories. They feel much more involved in the story than the first time around, and getting to know the new sides to these characters adds more depth and weight to the overall story. New boss fights. The new section in Chapter 4, which heavily features the members of Avalanche, also introduces a new antagonist and boss fight. As a third-class member of Soldier, Roche has quite the big personality. You first meet him as you ride on a motorcycle with Jessie to head to the Shinra warehouse, where you end up fighting against him on the road. As a reckless thrill-seeker, Roche expresses that he enjoys engaging in battle with Cloud just as much as he loves riding his motorcycle. You also end up fighting him one-on-one in a battle off-road later. Some of the original bosses see some changes too. The famous Airbuster fight returns, but there are some noticeable differences in the remake. Instead of just engaging in a battle straight away, there's a whole build up to the fight where you actively decide to remove parts from the mighty hovering robot to gain an advantage. From choosing to remove big powerful BB explosives to reducing its speed, the choices you're presented with add to the tactical approaches you can take in the battle against this classic boss. It's incredible to see how returning bosses have been reimagined as well, with what were once throwaway creatures like the sewer-dwelling Abzu transformed into epic confrontations full of newfound personality. These bosses have unique moves to learn and avoid alongside weak points that need to be taken down in strategic order with the right moves. And the way the cutscenes were woven in at pivotal moments always puts a smile on my face. Corneo's Colosseum. War Market sets the scene for one of the most famous moments in Final Fantasy VII. This time, it also introduces some new characters such as Madame M, who works at the hand massage parlor, as well as a new location. The market is now home to Corneo's Colosseum, where you'll participate in various battles with Cloud and Aerith in order to progress through the story and gain access to Don Corneo's place. The Colosseum is packed with challenging battles and also has a delightful little nod to the original sword-swinging victory fanfare Cloud and Co used to do in the original after every fight. During the story, we also get to meet another new addition to the character lineup in the remake. Silverhead Leslie Kyle works for Don Corneo and ends up helping Cloud and the gang during the sequence at Corneo's place. He also once again enters the scene in Chapter 14, where you learn more about his backstory and why he's so set on seeking to get revenge on Corneo. Right at the end of the story component to the Colosseum, we get to fight the dreaded Hell House once again too. Sephiroth shows up early. Sephiroth is one of the greatest antagonists in history, and in the original game, he doesn't actually make a proper appearance in Midgar at all. The silver-haired antagonist is talked about in the first portion of the game, and you also see the aftermath of Sephiroth's actions, but you don't actually physically see him in person. In the remake though, Sephiroth features quite prominently throughout the story and has a much bigger role right from the get-go. It's evident that his presence greatly troubles Cloud, which serves as a way of establishing that Sephiroth is an ever-growing threat that is linked to Cloud. When you first meet Sephiroth in Chapter 2, he appears to be an illusion born from Cloud's state of mind. As you follow Sephiroth down a narrow side street surrounded by flames, the screen flickers to suggest that Cloud is struggling to keep his grip on reality and is in fact hallucinating. The scene quickly establishes that Cloud and Sephiroth have a history. It also offers some insight into Cloud's past and an incident that's still affecting him. If the events that transpire in the original are anything to go by, the flames and the mention of someone crying out during this scene suggest that Cloud is seeing a hallucination of a past incident that takes place in his hometown. Sephiroth continues to pop up throughout the story ever so often. Whilst Sephiroth is more of an elusive figure in the original, there is still some mystery surrounding all of the past events and the ties that bind Cloud and Sephiroth in context of the remake, which will no doubt be explored in future parts. Back in early 2020, when I was streaming my very first playthrough of Final Fantasy VII, I was in the endgame, facing Sephiroth, and there was something he said, ever so slight. I had to pause the stream right then and there and jump onto YouTube to look something up.
7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see.
That's what was going through my head. That's all I could think of. Whether this is actually what he's referring to or not, who knows? But how could it not? It lines up way too perfect. Cloud's character is fleshed out more. As well as gaining insight into Cloud's inner psychology, we also see other sides to his character. In a lot of ways, Cloud was quite a blank slate in the original for various reasons. Acting quite cold and aloof, with an effortlessly cool demeanor, the remake softens his sharp edges to a degree and makes him more human and relatable. Throughout the story, we get more opportunities to spend time with various characters and see more of their personalities and backstories than we ever did in the original. One standout scene, for example, takes place at the beginning of Chapter 14, when Tifa is struggling to digest everything that just transpired and leans on Cloud's shoulder for comfort. It's a tender moment shared between the two characters, and it shows a more caring side to Cloud's personality. There are plenty of moments like this peppered throughout the story that show Cloud is much more of a complex individual than he first appears. Combat. The guiding star through areas new and old is Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat, which more than proves itself to be endlessly engaging across dozens of hours against more than 100 different types of enemies. I'll admit that I was initially sad to hear the remake would not use the original Final Fantasy VII's turn-based active time battle combat, or ATB. But the way that the iconic system has been transformed into real-time brawling is exceptional. And though you only directly control one character at a time, you'll constantly be giving orders and swapping between two more mid-fight. You can hack away all you want at enemies with the square button, Doing so charges up your ATB bars, which you can then use on unique weapon abilities, equipable spells, and items. Pulling up the command menu, pick one of these things slows time to a crawl, letting you comfortably pick actions for your entire party in the middle of combat. But that persistent slow creep forward adds tension to every choice that truly reminded me of the frantic decision making the original elicited. And look, there is a quote-unquote classic mode difficulty option, but all it does is automate all of your combat actions apart from your ATB use, making it a strange middle ground, which I tried but did not really enjoy. As I mentioned, you can definitely hack away enemies with square, but button mashing won't really get you very far. Every character also has a unique ability mapped to the triangle button that doesn't use ATB. For example, Cloud can switch to Punisher mode for extra damage but reduced speed, while Tifa can unleash a big finisher that's powered up by one of her abilities. You can also dodge and guard at will, and you'll need to do so a lot. Though it never got super challenging on normal difficulty with the exception of battling summons, there's enough nuance to it that simply mashing square to unleash flashy, basic attacks won't get you too far. In addition to the health bar, enemies now have a stagger gouge that stuns them and increases the damage they take when full. It's a system we're seeing more of nowadays, but the clever twist is that every enemy stagger gauge fills in a different way. Sure, some of the more basic guys like Were-Rats and Shinra soldiers you just need to hit a lot, but others might be weak to a specific element, or require you to dodge a certain attack or cripple a body part in order to stagger them. Those differences keep combat fresh the whole way through, and I genuinely loved learning the puzzle of how to take down each and every enemy. That variety is a big part of why Final Fantasy VII Remake's boss fights are so incredible. These cinematic showdowns are just as intimidating as they are exciting. Always multi-phase confrontations that rarely left me mindlessly swinging my Buster Sword. Weapon of choice. Another important factor to conquering any fight is how you use your party. You'll have up to 3 characters available and fighting at once. Who is available is determined entirely by where you are in the story. The ones you aren't controlling will attack and defend well enough on their own, but nowhere near as effectively as when you take control. And crucially, they won't use ATB bars unless you tell them to. This juggling act, managing the ATB of 3 characters at once, can be thrilling when you're also worrying about the robot trying to pummel your face, and it's intuitive enough that I got the hang of it quicker than I expected. You'll often need to switch the character you're directly controlling too, since each one feels like a specific tool for a certain job. Barret can easily shoot down flying enemies, Cloud can quickly increase stagger, and Tifa can lay massive burst damage on exposed enemies, and Aerith can send out big healing or magic damage as needed. Swapping between these characters sort of feels more like switching weapons than people in the heat of things, especially if you need to jump onto another character to more quickly charge their ATB for a specific move. While I spend most of my time with Cloud, because Cloud, I'd also find myself frequently switching between them just because they were all so much fun to use. This is not something I found myself doing in the original. To this day, I still default to Cloud, Tifa, and Red 13. It's good that their playstyles are so different because any materia can be given to any character. These collectible orbs are slotted into equipment to give characters spell and buffs, allowing you to make whoever you choose act as the mage, healer, tank, etc. Although their base stats do have some influence on that decision as well, this flexibility is really pleasing, and I found myself swapping materia and roles pretty frequently as the story shook up my party composition, which again, the original did not do anywhere near as often. There were certainly times where having to swap all those things around because of story, etc., got frustrating. However, it's leaps and bounds easier to adjust your materia here than it was in the original. As you get stronger, your weapons too can be upgraded. Some of the upgrades aren't too exciting on their own, but the overall result is a huge benefit. Each weapon stays relevant over the entire course of the campaign, growing in strength alongside you, making the customization options truly unique to the individual. I found myself frequently switching weapons as my materia builds and party changed, but thought it was poetic that my favorite ended up being the starting Buster Sword by the final chapters. Altered storyline. We get many heavy hints throughout the campaign that this won't be a shot-for-shot remake. As mentioned, Midgar is fleshed out to explore more of what the developers wish they could have in the original. As well, some materia, weapons and more being available so much earlier. Some of the larger changes include Sephiroth appearing early, Barrett almost dying, and the Avalanche team members. They're all alive at the end. It's unclear, but it seems like both Aerith and or Sephiroth are aware of the previous storyline in some way, shape, or form. And whilst this would aggravate me to no end for most other games out there, for this one, this excites me greatly for what the future of this story holds, and I for one cannot wait for Rebirth next year. Final Fantasy VII capitalizes on nostalgia for those who have played through the original, as well as expanding upon it in many ways. It also serves as a great jumping off point for those new to the Final Fantasy franchise, with so much more content coming just around the corner.
And very quickly, on a small side note, for one of arguably the biggest points of the entire remake, the soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal across the board. Right from Let the Battles Begin, all the way through to One Winged Angel. It's all there, and it's all filled to the brim with nostalgia.
Now these are just some of the first points that came into my head. I could go on about this for much longer, but I won't. I might make another follow-up video. We'll see how we go. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, look, the best part about this entire video is that Final Fantasy VII Remake holding up perfectly to the original is just my opinion. And at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's just my opinion. It's not fact. Regardless of whether your opinion aligns or differs from mine, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments below. Tell me what your thoughts are. Should this have stayed a shot-for-shot remake? Should they have kept it turn by turn? Are you as excited as me to see where they take this? I want to know what your thoughts are. Regardless of whether you align or disagree, your opinion is no less valid than anyone else's. Remember that. But for now, I've got links down in the description for Twitch, Discord, and more. I got much more of this coming up soon, so please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon. But until the next video, please stay safe, but most importantly, thank you for hearing me out. Until then, stay safe. Later, guys.